pleased to be joined by veteran seasoned journalist Mark Halperin, who is the author of Worldwide of News. Mark, look, I have you on because I've said this publicly and I'll say it to everyone here. You're probably the most sourced journalist that I've ever talked to in my 30 years in politics. I think next to the Mueller team, you have more sources about what's happening in the political world than they do when it comes to an investigation. You put out Worldwide of News all the time. Today, I thought you put out this list, the 24 people they're going to make a difference in the presidential election. I want to talk to you about that. I know that's a concierge service that you put out, and I'll tell people, you pay for a lot of things in politics, a lot of subscriptions. What Mark does is worth every penny because he knows all of the players. They all trust him. And the insight is something that you don't get anywhere else. I was fascinated by your list because you put at number 20, Cornell West, right? The Green Party candidate. I have said to people this: if you tell me how Cornell West does in 8 states, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, places and states, by the way, which have a big urban area where he is very popular or potentially very popular, then I can tell you who wins the election. I think that if Cornell West gets 50, 60,000 votes in many of these places, that tips it to Trump. Why did you put him at 20?
Well, look, I may move him up. He wasn't on my list in June, but it's pretty clear he's going to be on the ballot in probably all of those 8 states by the end. And we have to see how he does, right? Is he going to be like Ralph Nader? Is he going to be in a position to get that many votes? It's possible he could drop out. It's possible that he may mishandle his messaging. Ralph Nader handled his messaging great. And the other issue that I think will tell the tale is, what do the Democrats do? In the past, when they faced Green Party candidates, they've been reluctant to try to get rid of them, to try to neutralize them. There's talk already in Biden world. Maybe they need to be more aggressive this time, not wait until the end. And so I want to see how the Biden people handle him. I want to see how he does. And if it goes along the trajectory you're talking potentially about, I'll move him up. He may end up by my final rankings as number 1. Yeah. For the very reason you said.
Well, speaking of number 1, you put the judge down there in Fulton County, Tanya Chutkan, as number 1. Why?
Well, she's a judge in the D.C. case, not in the Georgia
my apologies.
case.
Too many judges to keep track of.
Yeah, there's a lot of judges, a lot of cases. Look, I think that the Georgia case is not going to go to trial before the election. I think that the New York case isn't going to matter no matter what. So it's a question of the 2 Jack Smith indictments. And I believe, based on what the judges have done so far, based on the nature of the cases, based on what Jack Smith has shown in terms of his cards, that's the case that's most likely, all other things being equal, to go to trial before the election. And I think the judge in New York, in D.C., has shown a much greater interest in getting to trial, just based on the early discussions, the early conversations in her courtroom and filings, than the judge in Florida. And I think that the entire election could hinge, leaving aside Cornell West for a moment, on whether Donald Trump is convicted before Election Day or not. And so her capacity, if she wants to do what Jack Smith wants to do, if she wants to set an early trial date, if she wants to rule in a way that is negative towards President Trump, if she wants to preside over a D.C. jury that convicts him, I think she has a very good chance to do it. And I think, again, although I don't believe, as some do, that his legal trial problems are dispositive, that they mean he can't win, I think a conviction could turn out to be a different thing. And I think, again, she's got as much control over whether he's convicted as anybody else in America right now.
I agree. It's funny, when I've been asked about each one of these felonies, I think that I've always distinguished between the political and the PR and the legal. And I think the political pieces, it's made him stronger. He's raised more money. He's hardened the base. But I agree with you. The legal situation in D.C., there's no jury that I think, if you look just as take a generic Republican, you're looking at 92-8, 93-7 in terms of how DC votes. You add in Donald Trump, who's much more polarizing than generic Republican. I don't see any way that he's not convicted. And I want to get back to the point that you're making. When that happens, Republicans so far have looked at this, as he likes to talk about it, as a witch hunt. They're coming after me. They're coming after me. They're coming after me. Does an actual conviction change the game?
Not definitely. It could, depending on how the case goes, depending on the nature of the jury. it's possible that a conviction rallies Republicans around him even more. But I don't believe there'll be a trial until after he's the de facto nominee in any of these cases. I think the Florida case is in some ways, more straightforward in terms of the legal case. But as you said, the D.C. jury will be not favorable towards him. The Florida jury, because it's the northern part of southern Florida, I think he could get an acquittal regardless of the strength of the case. But as I said, I think right now the base case is he's the de facto nominee before February 1st, because the base case right now is he wins the first two states. If he wins the first two states and he's the de facto nominee, putting him on trial is a different thing than putting the front runner on trial. So if he's convicted after he's the de facto nominee, but before the convention, I think there's a chance, even if he's convicted by a DC jury, a Democratic-oriented jury, I think there's a chance, depending on how things go, that the party may decide it's just not a good idea to have our nominee be a convicted felon.
But Mark, this is when I hear this all the time, people saying the party should do this. What leverage does the party have? If Donald Trump's on a ballot, he's on a ballot. I was with him in 2015 when everybody said after the Access Hollywood tape, you got to drop out. He said, screw you, I'm going forward. He's never going to say, I care about what the RNC and party leaders think.
I almost entirely agree with you, Sean. And that's why I think, I still think it's possible there won't be any convictions before the election. And that if there is, I tend to think you're right. However, it will be a bracing experience if, let's say, for instance, he's convicted with testimony and evidence from inside his circle. Let's say there's people who are MAGA all the way, who are loyal, who have been loyal to Donald Trump, but they take the witness stand. Then, look, if everyone in the world, if his kids, if his closest friends in politics, if his campaign staff all say to him, it's not good for you to do this. And let's say President Biden agrees to pardon him. If he'll stand down.
I've always said that Biden won't pardon him. He'll commute the sentence. Because he's not going to, he wants him to be tainted with the crime, quote unquote, but he doesn't want him to be in jail.
I agree. And not only would it taint him in some way, or not only would it would it let Trump off the hook, and Biden doesn't want to do that, he'd be killed by the left if he rewards him. But I could see a world where everyone is telling him, make a deal, and he is braced by the fact that, and again, I think the DC judge could well say, you're going to prison pending appeal, not allow him to stay out pending appeal.
And the funny thing about that, I've heard that more and more as a theory that whether it's Fulton County and what happens down there, because there's mandatory minimums, we don't have time to get into that, and then that they want him in a cell. And I think that's what so I think this is absolutely the right start, because I think so many people on the right don't want to face the reality of the possibility of what you're just brought up, because that's what the left really wants. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.